I'm Maria Menounos, and you're tuned in to AfterBuzz TV, the ESPN of TV talk. Now, let the buzz begin.
Hey guys, welcome AfterBuzzers to the after show for Hunter Season 1, Episode 2, The Mourner's Kaddish. My name is Nate Miller. I'll be here hosting with you, and to my left, the fantastic host, you may know him from the after show for our High Fidelity or from Briar Patch, Kevin Allen.
Hello everyone, thank you again for tuning in. Really glad you're here.
All right, we got a lot to get through. We're going to talk about Jonah, we're going to talk about Agent Millie, and of course we're going to talk about all of the Nazi plans that are going on. We've also got a special segment and some news, so make sure you stay tuned for that. But yeah, let's just jump right into it. We've got Jonah meeting the Hunters, as we saw last episode. What did you think of this kind of introduction to the Hunters?
This was the greatest introduction to any team up I've ever seen ever. I loved it.
That's some high praise.
I mean, we all tuned into the show because we were sold on this kind of like dark, intense, but Tarantino-like fun show.
Yeah.
And then we get to see the like B movie trailers for every single character. Every one of them got a completely unique and specific to who they are and their skill set. And that was all framed with the lighting of the candles ceremony. And there was so much to love about it. It was playful, it was colorful, and it was exactly what I wanted out of the show. I didn't think they would deliver that hard.
Yeah, I think especially coming off of last episode with a little bit of kind of a slower pace, jumping right into it and getting introduced to these characters that we saw last episode. And just like you said, the way that each one of them had their own intro told us so much about them in such a short period of time. It was just a really, really great introduction.
When it started off with like Sister Harriet, and we've got the gunslinging nun, which is just a staple of B movies.
Yeah, we find out she's former MI6, which is pretty cool. She's the super secret agent of the group.
And as it goes down, we have the former Black Panther, so we kind of had that blaxploitation film look.
Roxy, they list her as the freedom fighter. Lonny Flash, who is a famous and well-known actor.
Master of disguise.
But also a master of disguise. Joe Mizumisha, who is a Vietnam vet, and he easily the scariest one.
And when his came up, that's where the fun campy B movie thing started to take a turn. His got a little more Apocalypse Now, and I was like, okay, and like you said, I know more about this guy's his mission.
Yeah,
and who he is.
I think his personality too, to a degree. Yeah. We learn about Murray and Mindy, who are the kind of inventors, tinkers of the group. They're the Q to James Bond, so to speak. And then we've got, of course, Meyer Offerman, the bankroller, the guy in charge, kind of the head of this whole operation.
And his movie poster that they just kind of froze with was so dramatic, like the quiet drama. And yeah, it told me everything I need to know about just how tough oh my gosh, just how tough Meyer is and how much we should be afraid of him.
Yeah, and I mean, again, we're seeing these chess images being recurring throughout the show so far, as him as kind of like the chess master in charge of moving the pieces. So he meets the team. They get right into it. They discover one of the letters that they got last week leads to Karl Holstedder. We get a nice little, maybe nice isn't the right word. We get a little backstory on Karl Holstedder and his involvement. What did you think of that scene, the Star of Buchenwald?
That you're referring to the music.
The flashback, yeah.
Yeah. I liked it. Is it weird to say that?
I think it was well done. It obviously was really dark and grimmous, but
the determination that the musicians played, it was just fantastic. We've seen a lot in the first episode of the atrocities and the indignities that those who were subjected to the Holocaust had to endure. And we're going to see more of it as this show goes on. Right. But it was nice to see, okay, so these people, they've done the thing they were forced to do, but then they took it back and they used their skill set. It may not be explosives or code breaking or moving chess pieces around, but they played music, and it was what one could argue is a very small gesture, but you saw it spread as it went on.
I mean, Meyer even says later in the episode, in the music our people survived. And I don't have a very deep understanding of Jewish culture, but on a cursory base level, there are people who have gone through so much trauma and suffering for thousands of years, and part of their culture and the way that they're able to persevere and continue is through music and the celebration of life and the celebration of culture. And so it is really powerful to see them in that beginning scene. And then even that kind of plays to the same dichotomy of when we get Karl running his game in the radio station with the other people singing, and he's like killing them. It goes to show how for some people music can be this powerful, uplifting thing, and for other people it can be a tool of violence and of propaganda and all these various different things, as we see again throughout the episode.
Yeah, just like Meyer said, and I'm really glad he stated that, because I got to witness these two different scenes where music were used for two different reasons, but it was nice to have him just kind of reinforce that.
Yeah.
So I really liked the uplifting part of that very heavy scene, and I think it spoke volumes.
Yeah. So before they go after Karl, we do get a really interesting story Meyer tells Jonah about how he assembled the team, going to the matchmaker, where we get a really tidbit that I thought was really interesting. She kind of talks about the will they, won't they between Meyer and Ruth, which I don't think hasn't really been mentioned before. Obviously, they're friends, and they've been friends for a long time, and he saved her. But the way that she says it kind of leads me to believe that this is going to be something that's very important later, so I just wanted to point that out.
And coming from a matchmaker, probably very important.
Right. He calls her the fixer of the Jewish world, asks her to put together this team, and she talks about making 345 matches, equaling 957 new Jewish souls, which is incredibly powerful. This idea that, again, trying to rebuild, to persevere, to continue. And she says, she still feels like she is 5,999,043 short, which is like just heartbreaking.
It is, but that's why I really appreciated how Meyer followed that and said, like, give it time.
Right. And he says, if this is not enough, if God doesn't hear this, he must be deaf.
That too. She does make a huge impact.
Yeah.
900 people is a lot of people.
Yeah. But also even being able to come together and put this team of hunters together, like she says, if I'm going to bring these new lives in and you're telling me the Nazis are here, we have to make sure that this land is safe. So I think that really spoke to the motivation for why she would help him put a team together, and kind of really understanding that.
That's something I've noticed throughout this show so far, is it justifies, and I'm not trying to say ends justify the means by any stretch, but what I appreciate is their approach, that everything they do is about preservation, remembrance, survival. It's all very focused on life. That's the direction. Whereas in the contrast, all these Nazis are just about destruction and death. It's about extinguishing a light rather than trying to get one to grow.
Right. So the hunters make their plan to invade Karl's house. It's very covert. I think a really cool sequence kind of plays out there. They find Karl playing Moonlight Sonata on the piano very, very vigorously.
He's very passionate about music.
Yeah, it's no kidding. And so then they start their trial, as they call it. The hunters don't plan on coming in and just outright murdering them. They want, one, to get some information so they can find the other Nazis, but two, they want, like you said, it's a difference between just straight up wanton murder and destruction versus vengeance, versus justice for those who have evaded justice properly.
Yeah.
So we get this trial where they talk about witness reports and all these records that they have that put him there, which of course Karl denies as propaganda. And while they're doing this, Lonny is kind of looking around the room, looking at the bar, of course, and then he discovers this secret room. Yeah. Of course.
There's always a secret room.
Always a secret room. And we find out that not only is Karl a surviving Nazi and a music producer and all this stuff, but he is actively engaged in some type of conspiracy and broadcasting all over upstate New York, they say, some kind of cryptic German girl singing a lullaby, which seems to be a code for something.
Absolutely, it's a code. Like, it's just this repetitive melody with these nonsense lyrics over and over. Like, it's the most obvious code ever. If it's not a code, it's a thing designed to hypnotize people.
I mean that.
Either way,
could be a
it's
good
definitely
guess,
not like, oh no, kids really enjoy listening to this.
Yeah, he's not trying to make a kids radio station.
They're all tuning in on their ham radios to this frequency to hear this one song.
So after this discovery, they go to interrogate Karl with a brutal interrogation method.
Yeah, I was a little confused on how that worked, but then I was like, I don't think I want to know.
Basically,
Joe gets real.
Well, I mean, he says, which is true, the ears are incredibly sensitive organs. And the theory is that just like how you can damage your ears for long exposure to loud volume, obscenely loud volume, especially in a treated room where it's designed to keep the sound in the room, being that close to those 300 watt amps, it's going to be incredibly uncomfortable, especially as they turn up louder and louder and we see his ears start to bleed. But I think most importantly in this scene, we start to see Jonah's kind of discomfort with this whole thing. Even last episode, after being saved, he still was not really like on board with the whole killing thing. And in this point, he's pleading with Joe and Meyer to like turn it off, to let him go.
And let's be clear, it's not just killing that he's affronted with. It's torture.
Well, the torture,
and, like,
yes,
really cruel and unusual.
I mean,
I'm not saying he didn't justify it, but what the difference is it's not about what that guy did. It's not about who that guy is. It's about who Jonah is.
Right.
Jonah has never killed before. He certainly hasn't interrogated or tortured anyone before, let alone in a way that's kind of like sickening to watch.
For sure.
It's got to be incredibly. You see all that stuff falling off the walls, and you're like, that's what's happening in this guy's head. So I can totally understand why this is a hard thing for him to get accustomed to.
As a TV viewer, we have more insight onto what's going on, so it's a little bit easier to not be as sympathetic. But also, I think on the flip side, if they hadn't had Jonah react in that way, it would have kind of been like, all right, this teenage kid all of a sudden is like a badass and can see these things and not be scarred, and he's like fully on board with like murder, which the average person is not capable of. He's the code breaker. That was a great scene.
Yeah.
But I think like you said, it really speaks to Jonah's character, and I think it's going to be something very important. So he goes in to offer Karl some water. He gets this sob story about Karl's dad never letting him listen to music. And of course, it's all a trap.
Yeah, and this is where I was like, look, buddy, I get you don't want to torture this guy. I get that. But you just had a crocodile's tear Nazi overthrow you.
Right.
Don't make that mistake twice. Yeah. Come on.
Fool me once, shame on me. Fool me twice.
Yeah.
Won't get fooled again. It's a George Bush reference. Okay. Yeah, so he, gets it turned around on him. And of course, now... what's his name? Joe has to come in and shoot him, which he's very upset about because he just, kind of ruined the whole op as they were trying to get information. And accidentally, in shooting Karl, he damages the broadcasting equipment, causing the broadcast to stop. There's a very mysterious call that comes in, and of course, no one says anything because it's a mysterious call. And the hunters decide that they have got to get out of there. Very, very unfortunate series of events.
Yeah.
I think it's really interesting that even this early, like they made a lot of comments to him about kid and you're going to be in the way and stuff, but they kind of were proven right off the bat that he not only didn't necessarily contribute, but was an active kind of wrench in their plan and what they wanted to do. When
they were first sneaking in and he was following Lonny, because I remember Harriet making the crack about and Lonny's going to do whatever Lonny does. And I was like, okay, so at least her as the organizer of this particular mission, let Lonny lead the other person she didn't want to be there.
Right.
And I was like, oh no, this is a loose end for her. I know it. And of course it's exactly what happened. Yeah. I was surprised that they let him tag along at all.
I think Meyer kind of insisted. Again, being the code breaker, I think. He gives that speech to the sister about, I'm not a kid. I had my bar mitzvah 7 years ago.
It was a great speech.
And without me, you wouldn't have even gotten this far. You wouldn't have gotten this information.
And honestly, I was waiting for him to step in and crack that lullaby.
Yeah, I'm thinking he's going to crack something, or at least he could have found the secret room or something, but he didn't do any of that. So they quickly get out of Karl's place and they go to do the Kaddish for Ruth, which is from the title. And as Jonah's there in the church, he's saying the prayers and he's looking at his hand. He's seeing the blood in his hand and he hears the ringing that Karl spoke to him about. And he's just clearly distraught. He's not okay with what happened. He's just struggling. And, we see him run home and have almost like a breakdown.
Yeah. Understandably
yeah,
so.
No, again, this feels super realistic.
Yeah. And it's weird how this show does this. This episode started off so fun and fantastic and using all of these different storytelling methods and having fun with the way it introduced these characters. And then by the end of the episode, it's just raw and truthful.
Just darkness.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important to be able to show the dichotomy. It's just when you have those lighter moments, it really accents the darker moments. And I think it's a perfect example of in his head, like his Codebreaker movie and the pulp stuff that we saw earlier, it always seems, the dirty stuff seems more glamorous until you actually get into it, and you realize that it's not what you think it was.
Yeah, I think it's perfect. I love that the show does that for the character and for us.
Yeah, he's a real fucking Jupiter hero. That's another great quote. So also in this episode we have Agent Morris continuing her investigation. She's in Cape Canaveral. I really like a lot of the quotes in this show, so you're going to get a lot of them. She says to the guy who's yelling at her, she's knocking on the door, "I'm tired, I'm hungry, and I'm in fucking Florida, so give me a break." Just a great line. She goes to talk to the detective there, kind of tell her what she's learned about Greta being a Nazi, and then she finds out about Greta's brother. She tries to get information on Greta's file, but of course it's missing, as well as her brother's file. We learned last episode that they both emigrated together. Presumably he's a Nazi as well. So she goes to visit the widow, who is pretty suspicious, in my opinion. She asks her, he must have had to help Jews. How do you feel about that? And she goes, "Oh, well, how does anyone feel about them? They're Jews," which is like a really underhanded anti-Semitic
it's one of those
phrase.
things I was expecting her to give some vague line that kind of didn't admit anything, but that most people would brush off as of, oh yeah, well of course she doesn't hate Jews because she's not a monster. Why would she be a monster? And she gave that. Well, how does anyone feel about them? And me being Captain Naive, I would be like, oh yes, good. All right, you're a good person. But then she responded with, "They're Jews," which is one of those things where I bet in her head she's like, yeah, this is still vague and not affirming anything. This is
not giving anything away.
But the way she said it and her stare, and I was like, the
demeanor and the presentation was not good.
No,
we don't like that. But I do want to say that I think it does also speak to the general anti-Semitism that was going on back then. It was a lot more division, even in the white community, between the Jews and the Italians and the Russians and the Germans, and they all had their different feelings about each other, and there was a lot of hatred going around, unfortunately. So I think this is also a product of that, of why she probably felt comfortable saying it that way, because of maybe the community that she's involved in. But she mentions that her husband died in a car accident. The police think it was an engine explosion, and somehow the force knocked out all of his teeth, which to you and I, the keen viewers, knowing that he's a dentist and then later seeing that he has a box of teeth, I think it's safe to assume that the hunters got to him and pulled his teeth out.
That's exactly what I thought.
Which is a very, very gruesome thought.
Well, yeah. I mean, this is their line of work.
I mean, I think he deserves it. If
they're returning the favor.
Hurting kids,
Oh my God, it was more okay. So ever since you mentioned how the color red works on this show, she walked in the room and I was like, oh God, no, what's gonna happen?
It's the Nazi room.
Yeah, and it was just got worse because it was like, okay, so she finds these photos and each one is worse and more suggestive than the last, and then she stuffs in her pocket, and in my head I was like, well, you can't really prove anything by those photos. Like, you and I know what's happening here, but it wouldn't hold up in a court of law. And then she opened the box full of teeth, and I was like, never mind. Forget I said anything.
I think there's
there it is.
An easier way to establish someone as a monster than saying that they hurt children.
They collect children's teeth.
Like,
that is, I'm sure there is a Russian boogeyman story out there exactly like that.
It's spooky is definitely the word I would use.
So yeah, I'm totally fine that they pulled out all his teeth.
Yeah, I agree. I think
put him in a box.
as penance, that sounds good to me. So Millie eventually goes home to her girlfriend, which is a nice revelation that she is gay, and she talks about this Hansel and Greta story about how maybe people don't really see it for what it is, and that it might be a propaganda story. Which I think is a very interesting notion to think about.
I can't believe that's never crossed my path before.
That's exactly was my train of thinking, is that I never have looked that deep at it. But I think also that, again, this is one of the themes of this show, is that things that, might seem innocuous actually can be threatening and dangerous. And we got to stay vigilant for things like that. Anything else on Millie for you?
No, it was just nice to kind of get to see, like, granted, we've seen her personality. There's great performances since the first episode, but yeah, that revelation that she's gay, and that we get to see a little bit of what her home life is like and the relationship she had with the detectives in Florida. Like, we're really getting to know her as a character and start to understand a little bit of her principles. She's not just doing this in the line of duty. I feel like she has starting to have a stake in it, and we're going to just see how that manifests for her.
Yeah, I think even just like we said last time, that it's going to be a really interesting confrontation whenever she does catch up to the hunters, because I think morally she might agree with what they're doing, but internally, her internal law compass of being an agent and stuff like this, I think she's still going to be determined to try to like take them down or something.
And she's one of the few characters who is looking at everything still very subjectively, like incident by incident. That conversation she had with the detective about how this small woman in a photograph, doesn't look like a monster, but she's like, small people can be monsters.
Yeah.
We can be monsters. You and I could be monsters.
Definitely a very important.
Yeah. So
notation.
we're getting a good idea of how she views morality.
Yeah.
And yeah, going to be fun to see how that clashes.
Yeah, so our last little plot line we're going to talk about is Travis and the rest of the Nazi bunch. We get a very chilling scene of him on the airplane with his peanut evolution speech, which was just totally uncalled for. Keep it to yourself, my dude.
Yeah.
We get to see Biff Simpson is back again, Undersecretary of State, doing his performance on TV, crying about his family. And then we get to see him calling into the colonel, who doesn't want to speak to him. So I'm wondering why she's upset with him. It seems like he rattles off a list of things that they have to talk about, and she's like, eh. So I'm curious what soured the relationship out, because it seems like his cover-up is working totally fine.
Yeah, I mean, the interviewer bought his story like hook, line, and sinker. I thought it was a terrible performance.
Yeah, it was a little over the top.
Yeah, love means never having to say you're sorry. We've all heard that. I don't care if this is the 70s. We've all heard that line before.
Still cliche.
Yeah. But everything seems to be going according to plan for him. And I have a hard time sympathizing with the fact that the colonel doesn't want to talk to him. He's like, good, you're a jerk anyway. But taking a step back and trying to ration it out. Yeah, what has he done wrong?
Yeah. This colonel character is very mysterious and interesting to me. We see that she has a blackmail plot against what's his name, Senator O'Hare. Having one of her agents have sex with him so they can take photos to blackmail him. And of course, it's a Star Trek role play because it's the 70s, so why wouldn't it be? And she wants him.
Star Wars just came out.
I think it takes some time though before
that's true.
Traction
He's an older
comes back
generation.
on. Yeah, exactly. Okay. He's like, Star Wars. What are those light swords? So she asked him to end his filibuster against sanctions for the South American goods. So again, we're hearing this something some part of their plan is to get goods from South America into America. That
It's gotta be weapons or
it
something.
has to be. It has to be some type of weapons. I mean, we'll just skip ahead. At the end, the last stinger, we see the guy listening to the radio. There's a couple people. One of them is writing things down. I didn't get everything down on the pad, but it says something about a blast radius, which indicates bomb to me. And then the other guy we see circling spots on the map, he writes July 13th. Obviously the date of some type of attack or something. So we have some kind of idea of what their plans are, just not quite sure what they are in concrete. We get another really, really chilling scene with Travis.
I was going to say, that's probably why the Colonel's not opening up to him anymore, because she's playing everything very close to the chest. And this guy is going on public television now and speaking about his whole family. And he tied up the loose ends there, but things got messy for a tick. And she strikes me as the kind of person who will let absolutely nothing go off plan.
Yeah.
So
they've mentioned a couple times about how compartmentalized they are. And even Karl says, like, I don't know. I only spoke to one guy. I don't even know his real name. And so I think that does speak a lot to maybe why she's wanting to try to distance herself, because Biff might have too much of a connection right now and is kind of in danger of being compromised because of what happened. So again, we get to see Travis. He goes to Detective Summers' house and plays this very terrible game. And eventually it gets some more information on the investigation, why they're looking after Greta, and also learns about Millie and that she's leading this investigation for the FBI. So a little bit of kind of lead into some more plot that's going to happen throughout the season and kind of give him some information on the people he's supposed to be tracking down for the Colonel.
I was unnerved that he's been catching up so quickly.
Yeah. I mean, with the kind of resources I would imagine they have, it kind of makes sense to me. But
It does. It makes absolute sense. Nothing felt rushed or like the shark had been jumped or anything. But it just, I'm like, no, man. It's scary. It's scary how fast he's catching up.
I really like to believe that he didn't kill the family and that he only killed the flamingo and he let them go. So that's my headcanon, is that Detective Summers is still alive, even though I think that's pretty unlikely. So that's
a flamingo for no reason. It's just, I hate this guy.
It's a crazy story.
So much.
Yeah. I mean, the writing is working.
Yep.
So
great job, Hunter staff.
before we get out of here, we have some special segments. We can talk about news. Before we get into that, we've got our History Hunters segment. And really briefly, there we go. I just want to talk about the Mornis Kaddish, which the title is taken from and which we see them do in the end. The Kaddish is a hymn of praises to God found in Jewish prayer services. The oldest version of the Kaddish is found in the Siddur. The central theme of the Kaddish is the magnification and sanctification of God's name. So it's a prayer that's said at all services and other occasions. It's written in Aramaic. And it's important to note that the Mornis Kaddish does not mention death at all, but instead praises God, though the Kaddish is commonly referred to as the Jewish prayer for the dead. However, more accurately, it's described as El Mahi Rachmahim, I'm probably butchering that, which specifically prays for the soul of the deceased. So again, this speaks to the resilience of the Jewish people and the Jewish faith, and how they try to focus on the positive things even in death, that Ruth is able to return to God and to be there and to sing his praises for the long life that she was able to lead. Just a very interesting tidbit I learned about today. We've got some news. Kevin, what you got for us?
Yeah, I wouldn't really call it news. It's just an interview with Saul Rubinek, who plays Murray of Murray and Mindy, the weapons experts and technicians on this show. He did an interview with thestar.com recently, and it was just, what I love about the cast of the show is how invested they are in this show, and that it's not just another job for them, but that they truly love being a part of Hunters. So in this interview, he said, I auditioned for the series, but it was kind of like I was born to play it. And one of the appeals he has in the show, or that he has for the show, is how it addresses the complexities of evil and confronting evil. But what he was referring to is the fact that he himself has stake as a Jewish refugee. His first language is Yiddish. He was born in a refugee camp in Germany. His parents survived the German occupation of Poland for 2.5 years, thanks to a couple that was hiding them out.
Wow.
So he is very personally invested in his character's story. And just to continue that thread, his daughter, a real life daughter, appears in the show as his daughter on the show. She's just, I think, only seen in photographs, and like I think we maybe hear her off screen once or twice.
Oh, interesting.
But it's Saul Rubinek's actual daughter, Hannah Rubinek, which I think is just a really cool thing.
Yeah, nice little tidbit.
Yeah, so it's not just the creator of the show who is inspired by his parentage or his lineage's real life events. It's also some of the cast, and I just think that's really cool. I just think it's a really cool thing.
All right, real quick, we're going to get into some predictions.
AfterBuzz TV predictions.
Well, this is my turn to sit it out because I've seen the next episode this time. I know.
Kevin cheated.
I'm sorry. I've been biting my tongue on this whole episode.
We're taking turns watching ahead. So I guess for me, I feel like, just like you said, the pace with Travis, I feel like he's going to catch up to them sooner rather than later. So I'm really interested in seeing what's going to happen with that. And again, like this segment at the end, this bomb plot, I feel like we're going to get more details. But mostly, I'm just excited to kind of see what happens. It feels like they just jumped right into it after the intro of kind of the hunting aspect. But now that we have this kind of tension between Jonah and the rest of the hunters because of, his mistake, but also Jonah, really struggling with being a part of this man's death. I'm just really curious to see how that pans out. I feel like, like we said, fool me once, fool me twice. This third time, I don't know what it's going to be, but something is going to fundamentally change in Jonah, where I think he's going to understand that even though it's obviously a very tough thing to do, that they are doing what is necessary in order to, like Meyer says, to protect other people from this situation ever happening again, which is a real threat, as we know of from what the Nazis' plans are. So yeah, that's going to do it for our predictions this week. If you are watching live, or if you're not watching live, we're about to do episode 3 in just about an hour, so make sure you hang around for that or watch it again so that you are fresh up on all the details and you can correct us when we make mistakes. But that's going to do it for us today. My name is Nate Miller. You can find me everywhere at DogLikeNate. Kevin, where can people find you?
I'm Kevin Allen. You can find me on Twitter at Kevin Allen Says.
Awesome. Thank you guys for joining us again. We're going to get the rest of our panel. Janice couldn't be here tonight, but she will be back. So make sure you stay tuned for that. And we'll see you guys next time. Thanks.
Our founder, Keven Undergaro, and me, Maria Menounos, would like to thank you for tuning in to AfterBuzz TV. Remember, we're not just the first, we're the biggest in the world, and we're the only destination for all your favorite TV shows. Whatever you crave, we've got it. So go to AfterBuzzTV.com and check out our lineup. Buzz you later.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.